Hi, Eloise Ansell here. Hello, and welcome to my mini presentation on why isn't everyone psychic? So, we can explore this topic tonight. And what I will be covering is a little bit of an introduction to me, because you may not know me. And then we're going to talk about why everyone is not psychic. Or are they? Who knows? We'll get into that. And then I'm going to tell you about my new class, which is very exciting. And if you don't want to join me on that, I'm going to show you some other options and things that you can do in order to amplify your intuition a little bit. So stay tuned. So this is me. It's a very fun photo. I always call myself a geek. So my background is very varied, and I've worked in lots of different industries and kind of lots of different roles, but mainly IT. I did a maths degree. I've got a master's in computing science, so I'm kind of a girl geek. And it's very unusual back in the day. So it's very fun. Now, thankfully, there's lots of girls doing computer science and things, so very cool. And I randomly on my journey decided to start training as a life coach way before anyone knew what life coaching was. And I was setting all these big goals for my clients, and I decided to set a big goal for myself and run the London Marathon, which I did in 2006. And an injury running or doing my training for the marathon led me on a journey into becoming a healer. So I'm now an intuitive healer, and I've been doing this for years. So now instead of finding error codes in computers and in computer programs, I find error codes in the body. So still being a geek. I can geek out on how the body works and all this kind of thing. So I've been in full-time clinic since 2008. And I started teaching tools to structure the intuition and work with the intuition back in 2010. But in 2015, I created IntuitionTalks, which is like, at the time, was like a bunch of things that I was so excited about around intuition and really made a big difference for me. And I wanted to share it with other people. And when I was teaching my other stuff, I never had time to go into it all. So I thought, oh, let's put it into a separate class and have some fun with it. So IntuitionTalks is an 8-week course where you can go and get all of the educational side of it, but also there's some healing sessions to help clear your blocks to your intuition. So that is one option if you want to go into this a little bit further. But I'm talking about something else this evening. Now, during my journey with my business, I started trying to do what everyone tells you should do. And, even now I still fall into that pattern of trying to model other people and how they do business. And the one thing I've learned is to, as we say in the UK, and I'm sure other people do, eat your own dog food. Is that a saying? Or have I made that up? And I started using my intuition to guide my business. And once I did that, things just changed. Instead of feeling like really directionless and really frustrated, things began to flow. I got more clients. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time for things and opportunities. And I follow my intuition and let it guide me in everything I do. And it's so much more ease. So the other thing I've got down here on the little chart is that my Freedom Hub was born in 2020. And if you're interested in receiving group healings, that is my main place. So most of my day-to-day bread and butter of my business is doing one-on-one sessions, which I do remotely at distance. I have clients all around the world. I work on businesses. I work on clearing houses. I work on people, their children, their pets sometimes, all kinds of different things. So it is very entertaining, and I love, it's such an honor to be there for people in their life journey and really help and support them through, their struggles and their good times as well. So that's basically what I do. But I do a lot of group work, and most of my group sessions are inside the Freedom Hub. And if you like me and you want some, kind of plug in to my kind of inner circle where you get everything quickly, everything I'm doing, and you always get a discount if I can, that's the place to be. So I'm mentioning that just because, it's the fun place to hang out. So that's a little bit about me and kind of brings you up to date a little bit. But my intuitive journey, so I also already mentioned that I use my intuition every day. And like a lot of people, as a kid, I was very open. And I could write a book about what went on. I may do that at some point. But I was very open, and lots of things went bump in the night. Lots of strange things occurred. And I even once gave a presentation at Toastmasters about one thing that happened and what happened in my childhood. And half the room was sat there like, I don't know what on earth she's talking about. And the other half of the room was sat there in tears. I mean, it was really emotional. It was really interesting. But I went through a lot as a kid. And I just didn't understand what was going on. I didn't have anyone to support me. I don't think I really opened up and told anyone what was going on, and it was a bit interesting at times. So in my teens, kind of just before I went to university, I kind of shut the door down. I really kind of closed Pandora's box, as some people refer to it. And in 2008, when I started kind of getting into the therapy world and going to classes where we was working on the intuition, I started opening Pandora's box, and some scary stuff happened. Now, the thing is, I get weird things happen to me because I need to know about it to help other students. So this doesn't always happen, but I'm very well experienced, educated, and practiced in helping people with this journey. Because a lot of people, and I don't know about you, like, have something happen to them either as a kid or maybe later on, it feels quite traumatic. So we actually shut the intuition. We kind of close Pandora's box, and we don't want to open it because we don't want to know what's in there and what we're going to find. So if that's you, stay tuned, because there's a lot we can do to help work through that. So, but I started opening up, and I started using certain tools and getting my mindset in order and changing my belief systems. And so that I could start opening and working with my intuition in a safe way. I didn't need to protect myself anymore. I didn't need to worry about issues. I've got total boundaries. And when you've got those boundaries in place, it's very helpful. So now I live my life guided by my intuition, and it does tell me what to do. Sometimes it pushes me around, but the majority of the time it's really helping me on my journey. And sometimes, as always in life, we don't understand what it's telling us, but it is always guiding us in some way. And retrospectively, we go, oh, that was really cool. Well done, intuition. Let's kind of give it a pat on the back and move on. It's amazing what it has guided me to and helped and supported me with. We may get into some of that today. So why isn't everyone psychic? Let's start kind of playing with this and talking about it. Now, I was like, what is the definition of psychic? So I went into the Cambridge English Dictionary, and it says psychic is having a special mental ability, which is an interesting angle. For example, so that you know what will happen in the future and know what people will be thinking or people are thinking. So this is very interesting. Now I'm going to stop the share. So why isn't everyone psychic? What is psychic? Let's look at this. So when we talk about being kind of, for me, truly psychic and really open, you would be able to tap into all information through all time and space, kind of at will, or maybe all the time. And you'd know, the names of every single person that's watching this video on whatever day you pick. You'd know how many times I've gone to the toilet today. Some information is pretty useless, but some might be quite handy. So when we are truly intuitive, there's a lot of information that we can tap into. Now, finding someone who is absolutely psychic on all levels is pretty unique. A lot of people have snippets of things. So the one thing that I always say is that we are all intuitive. So we all have intuition, but we're probably not all completely psychic. So you've got kind of like someone who's a kind of sleep, like a muggle, so I'd call them, you know, completely closed down, doesn't believe in anything. You know, if you can't touch it, taste it, feel it, or smell it, it doesn't exist. I guess at some point in their life that might wobble a bit, but they dismiss it, you know, they just dismiss that experience. And on the other end, we'd have completely psychic people. Now, the majority of us are somewhere in the middle of that. And I can astound people sometimes with what I tune into. I surprise myself with what I tune into sometimes. The most random things some days. And, you know, I once I was invited to a barbecue last year. And the lady of the house, I didn't know. The barbecue was kind of to meet her. I knew everyone else in the family. And on the way there, my intuition told me what dress she was going to be wearing. I mean, I knew everyone else at the party. It wasn't going to be hard to work out who she was. I didn't need to know what dress she was going to be wearing, but my intuition told me on the way there. I was like, I didn't. It was really interesting. I was driving there, and suddenly my brain went, "You should have put that dress on." I was seeing a dress in my wardrobe, and I'm like, what did I want a dress today? Body, did you want to wear a dress? You know, I was really interested by this. And then I got there, and the hostess sounds like she was working on a plane. The lady at the house was wearing that same dress. And I was like, oh. So sometimes I tune into stuff which is kind of completely useless, but kind of cool. Sometimes when I'm in clinic and I'm working with clients, I can be doing a distance session on someone. I'm recording an audio, and suddenly I get a taste of coffee while I'm recording it. And when they feedback they're listening to it, they were drinking coffee when they were listening to their session. Like weird things like that happen all of the time. It still surprises me. It's still kind of cool. But I'm not truly psychic. I'm just intuitive, and I've done the practice of the hours. And these are some of the cool things that we need to talk about. So we all have intuitive abilities. Some people ignore them. Some people are kind of like, yeah, sometimes I listen to it. Sometimes my logical brain tries to override it. And sometimes we have people that, you know, live and breathe it. And so we're all kind of in different ends of the scale. Now, the more you play with your intuition, the more you trust it, the more it opens up for you, and the more you kind of get into that loop of using it. If we keep kind of using it a bit and then dismissing it, or we're not quite sure, or we ignore it, or we try and logicalize it, as I always call it, we start negotiating with our own brain, it fails. It will just collapse. So we're all, our experience with it and how much we use it and how much we work with it and trust it, and trust it in a way. For me, I always want to make it my best friend. Well, that's what my aim is for my clients and students. Then, you know, it's going to evolve. So we all have intuitive abilities. We're all able to access our intuition. We can't improve it though. We're born with a natural ability in our intuitive box, if you like, and we can work with it. We can learn to interpret it. We can learn to trust it. And that is what improves it or kind of upgrades it, so sometimes call it. We can't really get more psychic. It just takes practice. You have a natural ability and you need to kind of evolve and practice that and work with it to get better. It's not something that you can really kind of improve. It's there. So I was talking to a Zen Buddhist monk, as you do, the other day, and he was saying, like, we're all enlightened, we've just forgotten. And it's the same here. We're all psychic in a way, we've just forgotten. Like, we're all intuitive, but we don't all utilize it and make the most of it. So one key thing is that we all have different brains and different mental wiring and different abilities because of that. So some people are born with like their body is wired for being psychic. Some people are not. They're wired for a different purpose. And I always think in life we all have things and gifts and talents and things that we're naturally good at. And when we're naturally good at something, we think everyone else can do it, so we negate it as a talent. But when we all have natural talents, and like we can't all have the same brilliance in the world, because then, you know, there'd be no need for us on the planet. So we all have something different that we bring to the party and to the mix. And so we're all wired differently. We all have different talents and strengths. And one of your talents may be your intuition, but you may not have sat with it, worked with it, and evolved it in some way. So some people are like born with amazing mental capacity or abilities. So one thing, I'll put a link with this video to an interview with a savant. You can look up savants, and they're fascinating. So some people are born as savants. Some people just kind of one day something happens and they have this amazing genius kind of capacity. And some people have accidents, and it actually kind of rewires the brain a little bit, and they start using bits of the brain that most of us don't. So why do we have these bits of the brain that we don't all have access to? That might be something that we could play with and work with to evolve, and is interesting. So if you've seen the film Rain Man, that was based on a mixture of savants, but I think Kim Peek was the main one that they worked on. There is a really great interview that, as I said, I'll put a link with here, with a mathematician. He had an accident. He was actually attacked. He had a brain injury, and that kind of, when he came out of it, he suddenly was seeing the world as mathematical formulas and in a completely different way. He has a mix of savant and synesthesia, technically. And synesthesia is when your senses are wired, slightly meshed together. I think about 4% of the population are synesthesias, or whatever you want to call them. So they might see, some of you might see letters as colours, or you hear certain sounds with certain shapes, and or like interesting things like that. There's a really interesting TV show on the man that tasted. There's books and things like on the man that tasted shapes, and there was a BBC series where they looked at this synesthesia, and they found a man that worked in a pub, and every name had a different taste to it. So they used to hate it when Derek came in, because the name Derek tastes like earwax. So it sticks in my head. I always think it's really interesting. So we're all wired differently. So what fascinates me is we can find examples of people on the planet that have amazing abilities and kind of genius with their mind and their brain. And yeah, it may be through an accident. Don't start going around hitting your head and doing things. But some people have woken up, like, kind of with abilities. We've had, you may have seen examples of people who've had brain surgery or operations, and they've woken up speaking fluent French when they didn't speak French before. So there is definitely untapped capacities of the brain. Some people, through circumstances, kind of tap into things that the majority of us don't. And it's very interesting as to why not. Now, I personally believe, and then you may have heard people talk about things like this before, for me, it's like the world can go through phases where it's very open and everyone's very intuitive, and then it kind of closes down a little bit into more kind of darker times, or whatever you want to label it as. And then it's a little harder to tap into that natural state. And then at the moment, it feels like we're kind of opening back out again. And, you know, there would have been times in history where the majority of humans on the planet, you're always going to get those outliers at each end, but those majority of people are more kind of in tune with nature. They're more connected with what's going on around them. I always share examples. Like, I live on the south coast of England, And so, by the sea. And so, like, sometimes I go into a restaurant or pub or something with friends, and we go in and it's really warm, and then we come out like an hour later and it's suddenly really cold, and everyone's like, why has the temperature dropped so much? Like, it's so noticeable that everyone comments on it. And I'm like, well, the sea's going out. And they're all like, and I'm like, well, it gets colder when the sea goes out. And like, to me, that's like something I've known my whole life. It's something I'm very aware of. And I'm like, oh, the sea must have gone out. And then you can look on your phone and go, yeah, no, the sea just went out about 20 minutes ago. So the temperature changes. Now, once I mention that to people, sometimes they're more aware of it and they start thinking about it. But most of us are quite kind of closed down and shut down to that kind of nature and what's going on around us and how it affects us. We might talk about how the moon affects us or the planets and things, but we don't really notice it unless we are open and aware to that level of detail, if you like. So we go through these phases. And, for me, we're always going to get people that are going to stay in the kind of muggle side of things. And we're going to get those people that are always going to be very open. And we're all going to be in the middle of that. But, that kind of curve could go kind of like left and right of the that norm curve, depending on how open the planet is at that time as to how open most of us are. So it's, why we're not all psychic comes down to a number of factors. One, it's your natural wiring. Two, like how much you actually work with your intuition, how much you're actually paying attention to it and trusting it and working with it and evolving it in learning to understand and interpret it, because that is a massive piece of it. And sometimes you need to be shown how to do that, or you need to hang out with people that are quite intuitive in order to evolve your intuition. So this can happen in lots of different areas and aspects of your life. You need mentors sometimes to open up spaces. So I always share an example. If you've seen the film What the Bleep, and I'll put a little video to that below as well. In What the Bleep, they showed a little video clip of this, and allegedly in the Native Americans, when the ships arrived, I'm presuming that was Christopher Columbus or whoever, they had no concept of what a ship was. So they could see the ripples on the water being really different, and they were watching that going, what's causing that ripple on those ripples? Like, they had no concept of what a boat was. So the wise man or the medicine man or whoever it was staring at the sea for days, trying to be open to what was causing these weird waves. And eventually he saw the boats, and then he told the others that boats existed, and then they could all see them. Now you may go, well, that's probably made up, but it probably is true, because we've all had times, if you've been on a kind of spiritual journey at some point, where you think you can't do something, and then you'll hang out with people that are doing it, and suddenly you can too. I had an experience of this. I was on an energy medicine class, and we were doing this thing in groups, and all the other women in my group were like, oh, can you feel that? Can you feel that? And I'm like, stood there going, are they making it up? Are they loonies? It's like I had no awareness of what they were tapping into. But I'm like, I stood there going, oh, let's just be open, because they're obviously having an experience I'm not. And as soon as I kind of surrendered to the fact that, okay, well, whether I feel it or not, it doesn't really matter, I suddenly started feeling it. And I was like, oh, that's what they're feeling. But it was like I needed them to observe it for me to be able to observe it. And so that can be very helpful on our journey, is to hang out with people that are kind of, well, I don't want to say more evolved, but people that have been there and done that and got the t-shirt, because it opens up different spaces for us. And I'm very conscious of that when I'm teaching intuitive things. I have students show up for my classes who can do things that I can't do. And I'm okay with that. I'm kind of giving them the tools, holding the space for them, and then it's like, see what you can do. Let's see what you can do. And yeah, they do amazing things. And I'm like, oh, I've been trying to do that for years. It's really funny. And I'm not the guru. I'm not, I don't know everything. but I've done my time. And there's a great book. Is it Malcolm Gladwell? I always get his name wrong. Gladwell. Outliers. Now, I talk a lot about this book in Intuition Talks, but he's talking about people that have like overnight successes and like amazing, like turn up on the scene and stuff. And you're like, how are they so good at what they're doing? And what he proves is that they've normally done about 10,000 hours of something. So it's kind of interesting. So he cites people like the Beatles. The Beatles showed up, everyone went mad, amazing band, all the rest of it. And what he actually went into was documenting their history. And what happened was they'd been booked to play some clubs in, like, I think it was Berlin or something, and they spent years, hundreds of hours playing together in these clubs before they had their break. So when they had their break, they looked like this amazing band, and it looked like they were like a cut above the rest, but it's because they'd done their hours already. They'd already played together for hundreds and hundreds of hours. So it was very natural for them to be that little bit better than everyone else because they practiced. So in that book, Outliers, talking about, doing your 10,000 hours. Sometimes it takes time and practice to get good at something. So that's another reason why we're not all psychic. Some people are born that way and they live that way. I have friends that are a lot more psychic than I am. And it's really cool seeing what they see. But every time I hang out with them and I observe them doing something, it opens up a space for me to do things as well sometimes, and vice versa. It's kind of fun. So what are we tapping into? For me, if you've watched the film The Matrix and you see all those green bits of data, which, geek fact, well, apparently they're all Japanese symbols out of a cookbook or something boring, the original film. But all the data, if you haven't seen The Matrix, go and see what Keanu is. But they're talking about, it's a made-up film, but they're kind of talking about how things really are. So everything in the universe is just data. Consciousness, we might label it as. The Akashic records, I can never say that, is also another label that we might call it. And there's all this information. We just need to learn to, as I call it, tune the radio station and get that right dial, that right station to tap into that thing or that person. So when I'm doing clinic on, I can be doing a distance remote healing session for someone the other side of the planet. I've never met them. I haven't had a photograph of them, but I've got their name and their date of birth, their address, I've got their email, I've got ways of tapping into them. And I just tune my dial to them. And it's very easy once you're practiced at it. But if you think you can do something, you can. And if you think you can't, you can't. So that is another major factor of why not everyone's psychic. If you grow up in an environment where your intuition is celebrated and and is something that you talk about, it's going to be more natural and normal to be in that state as an adult than if you live in a home life or something where you might be having the mickey taken out of you all the time for having that awareness. I know I used to see things when I was at school and get told off all the time for telling the other kids, I was making up stories, but I wasn't. These things were there, It's kind of like annoying. It was really frustrating. I'm like, why are you telling me off for, like, you can't see that, It's just like really random, but we all have like imaginary friends as kids. We're all very open and we don't have all these blocks and these barriers. We haven't been told that we can't do things. So we have a lot more information. We have a lot of more ability to tap into everything in the universe and see things and create things as well, like our imaginary friends. And we live and breathe that creativity, which goes hand in hand with the intuition. It's a very, very connected intuition and creativity. So it's beautiful. And as kids, we kind of live and breathe that. And then at some point we stop drawing and colouring and we get told to stop talking about, witches and goblins and stuff. And and write and spell and do all the other things. Now, spell is an interesting word, isn't it? Words and spells. Are they the same thing? Why couldn't I spell as a kid? Oh, I wonder if that's a past life as a witch where I now made a vow never to do spells again. Just realised that's quite funny. I'll balance that later. So, the reason why we're not all psychic is because there's so many factors. Our upbringing, how we're wired, how much practice we've done, what our circumstances are, who we've hung out with. Have we done our 10,000 hours? And this is why I get excited about offering classes and courses where you can, for a fixed amount of time, because I don't like doing things for too long. I don't know about you. I don't like these year-long programs. It's just not me. But for Intuition Talks, it's 8 weeks. What I'm offering now is 6 weeks, where you can really deep dive into your intuition. Intuition Talks is there. If you want to go and grab it, it's available. You can work through it at your own pace. You've got access to it for the life of the course. So you can work through it every year if you like, for the next few years, and keep diving deeper into that work. If you want to take Intuition Talks, go for it. It's awesome. It's going to be around for a while. If you want a little mini snippet of it, you can take my 11 Keys to Intuition, which is an hour-long video talking about some really key, simple things that you can do in life to get your intuition kind of more in tune and remind you of some of the basics. And then there's a couple of, 3 healing sessions that you can use in a bonus audio so that you can actually start to play with your intuition and get going. So there's 11 Keys, there's Intuition Talks. But if you want a really deep dive, come and join me for the Intuition Talks practical class, which I am starting this month in February 2023. And if you're watching this later on, still get in touch. We might run it again. Now, there are only 6 spots for this class because I'm running it in a new way. We're going to play and try something out. I've already had a couple of people say yes. I've had a few people say they can't make the date, so we might do it again later on in the year. So, let me know if you're a no for this time, but maybe in the future it's a yes, and we'll see if we can get a time that works for everybody. But I'm going to be offering a 6-week Intuition Talks practical class. I don't quite know what I'm calling it yet, but we are going to get together every week for 6 weeks for a couple of hours. And we're going to deep dive into the intuition. We're going to tick off some of those 10,000 hours. We're going to be exploring our intuition. We're going to be getting those key ahas, clearing those key blocks, and both as an individual and as a group. And you're going to be working together as well as with me to really support each other over this 6 weeks. So we can really deep dive for 6 weeks and, take that next step with your intuition. Learning to trust it, learning to kind of evolve it, working with it, playing with it, and really bringing it out for you. So it is going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be quite transformational. Just think what your life could be like at the end of 6 weeks of playing with your intuition. I would love you to get to the point where you're living and breathing your intuition on a daily basis. Now, that was my aim with Intuition Talks. But because it's all self-learning and you sit at home, I can't force you to do anything. Whereas if you actually come and take a practical class with me, I thought that might actually kind of help everybody just get a little bit more active and into it and make a big change in that way. So you don't have to have taken Intuition Talks to come on the practical class. You are more than welcome to sign up for both. And just go through your own time. But the practical class, we're going to have videos every week. We'll probably have some healing sessions. We'll do whatever the group needs. So each round may be a little individual and a little bit unique based on whatever the needs of the group are. But I'm excited to do this first round. Hopefully there'll be a second. And if you'd like to come and join me, there'll be a link here where you can find out all the dates and find out more about it. And it'd be lovely to come and play. So even though we're not all psychic, we can still go on that journey and kind of improve our intuition, upgrade it, evolve it, whatever we want to call it. It's just our natural ability. We've just forgotten how to tap into it. We've got out of the habit of trusting it, or we've forgotten how to interpret it. And we just need a helping hand sometimes to get back on the horse, that's a good expression, and get back in touch with our intuition. So if that feels like something that would be good for you, come and join me on this journey. And I'm excited for this class. It's going to be very cool. So any questions, pop them in the comments, drop me an email, info@eloiseansell.com, and hopefully I'll meet up with you at some point, either online or in person, or maybe book a session and I'll see you in the ether. Okay, have a great day. Bye.